hate that fucking bird.
Well, we got we got Jim Schwartz in the building, and so you know what this has to be. We got to talk about the defensive line. If you're gonna want to ride wide nine technique, you got to have the horses to do it. First segment, we talk about the philosophy that the Cleveland Browns want to take. Will you be more happy with a big name splash, maybe a one guy, a Deron Payne, or would you be better served in taking that money and spreading it out and making the defensive line better with depth? So we'll talk about that philosophy. We'll talk about some of the big name free agents in the second segment. And when it comes to the defensive tackle, some of the names that are available out there, some of the names that have been talked about, we'll discuss those. And then in the third segment, we will get into the defensive ends. Jadeveon Clowney, not part of the team anymore, won't be back with the club. But where are some names out there available that could add some depth or possibly a starter at defensive end? We talk about the D-line, the big uglies, on this episode of the Locked On Browns podcast.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things dog pound, LGB on ELOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your hosts, Jeff Lloyd at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd from the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, radio personality at 92.3 The Fan, of course, the barbershop on YouTube, pregame, postgame coverage for all that is local to Cleveland, Ohio, Mr. Garrett Bush at G Bush 91. As he said, we're going to get into it a little bit here today. Jim Schwartz in the building, presser in the books. It's official. Jim Schwartz, your new defense coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, at least for the 2023 season. We'll see the way it all plays out. But the Browns have upgraded at the defensive coordinator position. Today's episode of Locked On Browns is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. Pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than the Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Yes, indeed, Jim Schwartz now official. The word came down yesterday, signed, sealed, delivered, press conference today. So we're going to start, foreshadowing here and trying to see what is the best way to put Jim Schwartz and his newly acquired, Browns defense in the best possible position to succeed. As you all know, when we talked about, in previewing Jim Schwartz when he first interviewed, when we got to it yesterday, when it was announced that he was officially going to be the defense coordinator, this is a man whose strength as far as being a solid guy in being a defense coordinator is built on defensive line play. Now, there's a couple of schools of thought here. The Browns are moving on, and you went through this last year. You went through Jadeveon Clowney in 2021 as an $8.5 million player. You got 9 sacks. You got a ridiculous return of your investment on the Jadeveon Clowney signing in 2021. 2022, $14.5 million, time missed, a little disgruntled, but most importantly, the play wasn't there on the field with Jadeveon Clowney. Did not look like a $14 million player, did not perform like a $14 million player. You certainly didn't get the statistical output from a $14 million player. So now I know one of the big names supposedly to hit free agency on the defensive tackle position. And look, I don't even think it's 50-50. So these may be conversations that are never going to happen, because talking with a lot of Washington people like G and I did the week of the Commanders game, of course, we poked the fires. Hey, what's the story with Deron Payne? They feel, almost everybody affiliated and covering the Commanders franchise feels like the franchise tag is the way it's going to go. They are not sure that the pass rushing ability that Deron Payne was able to show in 2022 is something that's going to continue to show in his time in Washington. So getting a long-term deal, they feel may be a little bit difficult. You never know. But Deron Payne may be. But this is the type of guy we're talking about. Or whether it's a Javon Hargrave from the Philadelphia Eagles. Guys who are maybe still in the prime. Now, this is, you're talking about maybe taking Clowney's money, putting a little more on top of it for one guy. Gee, confidence-wise, we know what we got in Myles Garrett. I don't think anywhere else on this defensive line we have much confidence as far as what anybody can give us as far as their role. Do we expect better performances from Perrion Winfrey, Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas? Yeah, I think this is something similar to some of the offensive linemen here that have improved with a guy like Bill Callahan around. But gee, I don't want it to be a scenario where it's, you have Myles on the field, say you have a Deron Payne on the field, another $8 million player on the field. And then these guys get winded and we're trotting out the same old guys that we don't necessarily have the faith in, that we haven't seen the growth from. So it's great to go out and bag a big fish, basically. But for the Browns, you know what I'm saying? I think for me more, I want a little variety. You know what I'm saying? I want some shrimp on that plate. I want some clams on that plate. Maybe a tuna steak. Going all in committed to one star defensive player, and especially a guy like Deron Payne, where we're talking about most of what he does is as a pass rusher. That's all well and good, but this team has never been able to stop the run. And that, first and foremost, you're going to have to work that way. You're going to maybe have to worry about the 320-pound defensive tackles first before you worry about the guy who's going to be aiding pass rushing.
Yeah, what you're going to have to do, you're going to have multiple fronts working here. They're going to need somebody to step up. They're going to need somebody that they have already on that roster, whether it be somebody like Jordan Elliott if they decide to keep him, whether it's a Tommy Togiai if they decide to keep him, whether it's somebody of that ilk stepping up and actually having some development. They're going to need that. Plus, they're going to actually need probably one big name, and you're going to need some other guys, some other names. And so you look at it, obviously, Javon Hargrave is a guy who's plays for the Eagles, and the Eagles have what I call a spoil of riches. Hargrave, 29 years old, ranks third among defensive tackles in pass rush grade, pass rush win rate, according to Pro Football Focus. He tallied 11 sacks in 2022, so he's going to get a big deal. But keep going. Go down the list. There's another guy that has been good in this league for a long time. That's another guy, Fletcher Cox, for the Eagles. He's a guy that gets after it as well up front. It's the reason why the Eagles are still in the playoff chase, won their division. People say his best days are like behind him, but he's really still a good player that could bull rush. He can get to the quarterback. He can get upfield. And obviously he's somebody that Jim Schwartz is familiar with. He's a 6-time Pro Bowler, 14 QB hits, 7 sacks last year as a D tackle. And guess what? That 7 sacks as a D tackle would be second highest on the team, even though the Browns had, a guy like Jadeveon Clowney. And then you have to start looking at some other guys on this list. You got a guy like a Sheldon Rankins. And he's another guy who was part of the Jets. Jets had a really great line and a great defense this year. He finished with the second best Pro Football Focus overall grade of his career, 73.1. And he can be sneaky good for a team. So there's a lot of guys on here that you need to know. Those are the bigger names, but there's also some guys on that list that could potentially help you a little bit as well. If you're looking for maybe a bottom of the barrel type guy, a couple of defensive ends that could probably give you some love. You look at a couple of names down at the bottom, guys that you may know. Remember our friend Andrew Billings, right? You got guys like Jonathan Hankins. He's about to be 31. He's a free agent. Linval Joseph's a little older than the two, 34 years old. We all know about Ndamukong Suh, but what about a Chris Wormley? A guy like that, defensive tackle, almost 30 years old as well. Those are just some of the names that you can think about that could possibly give you a little push, or some guys that you can get for a discount.
Yeah, we're going to get to a little bit more here in the second segment about some of these guys, because in my opinion, I think the goal for the Browns, and this is just free agency, I'm not talking the draft, the goal for free agency should be probably 3 defensive linemen. At least one edge, probably 2 veteran defensive tackles. Let all the young guys battle it out to see who gets to basically keep their roots here. You brought this man in for a reason, and you want to give him the most talent you possibly can. And for Jim Schwartz, I'm sure he's going to have a pretty solid hand in picking some of the guys that are going to be part of this. We're going to switch it up here, go a little bit more into available defensive tackles. Browns should probably be interested in pursuing. Segment 3, we'll actually look at pass rushers because a veteran pass rusher in here is going to be paramount. Look, we all hope for Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas to make the next jump, but hope ain't always going to get it done, folks. Jeff Lloyd, Garrett Bush, your latest Locked On Browns. I'm telling you right now, you look at some of the games this weekend, the way the Jacksonville Jaguars are playing, going to Kansas City, the Bengals, Bills, the game we didn't get, but all the good things that came out of it, what could be an absolute barn burner between Buffalo and Cincinnati. This is why, man, I cannot wait this weekend to start putting together some prize picks lineups. It's simple. You pick 2 to 5 players. If they go score more or less than the prize picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. You're not competing against other people. It is you versus the projections available. That's it. Prize Picks offers projections on any sport that you watch. The NFL, the NBA, MLB, NHL, NASCAR, heck, even Euro basketball if it tickles your fancy. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. Safe and fast withdrawals. Currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com, sign up, and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 1% instant deposit match up to $100 with the promo code LOCKEDON. All caps, no space. You deposit $100, they give you $100. You deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100.
Welcome back to the Locked On Browns podcast. I might well want to say this is the Locked On D Tackles podcast. We talking about interior linemen, Locked On big fellas. Me and Jeff are telling you, giving you a guide to what you need to be watching, especially at the position of need in the offseason. You'll hear it during the draft. You'll hear it during free agency. You'll hear it during trades. It's the big fellas. How are we going to improve the defensive tackles? And the only way you'll know that is if you're watching and listening. Watch us on YouTube. Listen to us every single day. Your team every single day. We'll definitely have the breakdowns for the off season. We are your go-to people on the off season. During the season, we got you, but in the off season is even more important because we're going to be breaking down the nuances, the small little nuggets, the names and the guys and the minutia that you might not get anywhere else. So if you're a true Browns fan, you might want to subscribe. Tell somebody, look, I got to watch Locked On Browns podcast. And if you're a Browns fan, you should too. So, salute to all the people that support us on YouTube. Support us definitely every single day as your first listener today on our podcast, and follow us at Locked On Browns on Twitter. Now, Jeff, we went over philosophy video first. Went over philosophy. What do you want, 1 or 2 guys, or you want one big name? Let's drill down on some of these names and the defensive tackles that's available. I think we mentioned it, and we said the same thing, for ourselves, is one of the guys that we really believe is going to be the number 1 defensive tackle on the board as far as the guy that's going to get a bag of money, and that's Deron Payne. Some people would argue him and Javon Hargrave would be 1 or 2 or 2 and 1, no matter how you want to flip it. But Deron Payne, to me, is a guy that has even a little more upside because of exactly what he's able to do, get after the quarterback. So it's all been about improvement for him. He was drafted in the first round, 2018. He immediately thrived as a run blocker. But since he tapped into his pass rushing skills, he's logged a whopping 91 quarterback pressures in the last 2 seasons and crushed his previous high of 5 sacks with 11 and a half this past season. He's definitely a pass rushing defensive tackle, which are very rare in this league. And he's doing it at a very high level. What impresses me about that is 91 quarterback hits. Now, you got to take it in consideration. If Myles Garrett is getting those hits and getting to the quarterback that fast, think how dominant your pressure is going to be if you're getting those hits from the pressure in the middle. So I think that's going to be one of the things that you're really going to talk about. If you're still talking about some of the other top names, a guy, I think, and a guy like Sheldon Rankins, a guy like Fletcher Cox. Now, Fletcher Cox is a little older than Tooth, a little longer than Tooth. I don't know if he wants to come somewhere else. He's playing for Philadelphia. They seem to be a good team. They seem to be a team that he loves playing for, only played for one team in his life. So I'm guessing that Fletcher Cox may take another 1-year deal. There's a couple of the Philadelphia Eagles that we need to talk about as well, because there's some edge rushers out there that the Eagles got that may be able to may be able to pluck out of their system. But as constituted, as far as the defensive tackles, do you have anybody else, Jeff, that would be, I guess, a splash name besides Javon Hargrave and Deron Payne?
One name I'm actually going to go with, and this is from the Los Angeles Rams, A'Shawn Robinson. And now listen to me, when you guys use Spot Track, sometimes you got to realize you got to manipulate. Not everybody's going to show up in the defensive position you think. You're going to find pass rushers and outside linebackers. You're going to find some guys that are traditionally defensive tackles and defensive ends. But A'Shawn Robinson, here's a guy just with a track record of being a good interior player. His rookie years ago with the Detroit Lions, I think his overall grade was a 73 point something as far as being a run defender for the Detroit Lions on a team that was not a good team. You basically, I think the way you got to look at this is you got to look at the way you're going to build this. So obviously you're going to build it from first down back. You know what I'm saying? You're going to build, for your run defense. Then you're going to work on your pass rushers. Don't sleep on Taven Bryan possibly coming back if the money works. I think Taven Bryan is probably a better fit in a Jim Schwartz system than he maybe was in a Joe Woods system. Him being a starter where the run game has never really been his strength. He is a little bit more active. He is a pretty good athlete. So those are things to certainly to consider, with a guy, of course, like Taven Bryan. But A'Shawn Robinson, Davin Tomlinson, these guys have never really found, their calling cards as being complete overall defensive ends, early down defensive ends. And I think for the Browns, this is where you got to start and you got to put the onus on. Because if you're going to do this and you're going to build this right, your ideal situation is to get in 2nd and 9, 2nd and 8, 2nd and 7s. So where you're almost eliminating the threat of the run, then now we start getting our better athletes on the fields to chase after the Joe Burrows or whoever the quarterback might be for the Baltimore Ravens. Or, Kenny Pickett, which, sorry, Pittsburgh Steelers fans doesn't really do much for me, guys. So I know you're all taking your victory laps and that's all well and good, but I'm not seeing it there, to be honest with you all. But these are the type of guys you're looking at. And for me, and I look at, the Bills last year signed 2 non-starting defensive tackles. I think they paid them $6 million a piece. These are rotational pieces. These are the guys that are going to probably be even more important than the guy they do spend a good chunk of change on. You need the dirty work guys. You need the guys who are willing to get involved. And basically my job is to go, my job is hopefully to only have to play 1 snap. That is what my job hopefully is. And then I get off the field. The athletes come in, do their thing. Next thing you know, they're punting. We got the ball back in the hands of Deshaun Watson in our offense. So you got to look at those types of guys. Look, Fletcher, Cox, Hargrave, each one would be a fantastic name. Number one, you have to worry about one thing. What happens with Philly the rest of this season? Philly either gets to the Super Bowl and loses or gets to the Super Bowl and wins. It's really hard as a guy for Fletcher Cox, who's been there as long as he has, to say goodbye in that situation. Hargrave, it's going to be interesting. If I'm Hargrave, man, I'm going to top dollar. I've already cashed in once. I'm going to cash in a second time because I've shown I can play in a 3-4 defense. I've shown I can play in a 4-3 defense. I am versatile like that, so pay me for it. But there are names, and a lot of names, like Sheldon Rankins, quiet name, interesting name. As far as what he did this year with the Jets, coming back from injury in his time with the New Orleans Saints. This has got to be something. And again, as I mentioned yesterday, and this is something that's going to be on the Browns themselves. The Browns, you do self-scouting within an organization. Hey, after 3 years, what do we do well? What do we not do well? One thing, and if you got to be completely honest with yourself, is the Cleveland Browns. And look, it's been many administrations before that, but this one now, over 3 NFL seasons, cannot find the correct way to build a defensive tackle room to what they want to do. That is why you go get a guy like Jim Schwartz, who's been an 18-year NFL defensive coordinator, who is now on his 4th defense coordinator job, because you basically say you're going to come in and hopefully complete this for us. We understand this is an area of weakness for us, so this is why we are going above and beyond to make sure it is not an issue for us anymore. So, some of the names probably not going to be pretty. Deron Payne, maybe not even making it to the market. That's fine. How often do we play the Washington Commanders? He wants to go finish 3rd, 4th in the NFC East for the rest of his life. Knock yourself out, camp. That's fine. As long as you ain't coming to the AFC at all, or coming to the AFC North in particular. If you're not in Cleveland, but you're going to stay in Washington, that is all good with us. We're going to flip it up here. We're going to start talking some pass rushers that will be available as well here for the Cleveland Browns. And again, like I told you guys, if you're looking for some of these names, don't be afraid to start looking in other positional groups because you're going to find some of those guys there. Garrett Bush, Jeff Lloyd starting to get some look here at maybe what the free agency target would be when you've got a defensive coordinator, the ilk of Jim Schwartz. BetOnline is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to the NBA, before you know it, it'll be MLB. They've got you covered at betonline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Welcome back to our. This might be a little preview. We just wetting the whistle a little bit to, getting you set up for the guys that you should be watching out for free agency. Because the Cleveland Browns need to get creative. They need to do some things, whether that's trades or free agency. Today, we're just taking a look at free agents or potential guys that the Browns could take a look at snatching up. We just talked about the defensive tackle, some of the names you need to know. But we're going to give you right now some of the edge rushers that we feel can give the Browns some pop off the edge. Obviously, Jadeveon Clowney is not going to be coming back, not in the fold. We're looking for some guys to bolster that other edge. We didn't get what we wanted out of Chase Winovich. We do have some hope for Isaiah Thomas, and obviously, Wright is going to be a guy that's out there and showing some promise. Alex Wright. And so we want to take a look at some of these edge rushers as well. Make sure you follow us so we can give you these breakdowns, whether it be defensive tackles, whether it be edge rushers, linebackers is another high key point of emphasis for this offseason. Wide receivers as well. You won't know when we coming up with these forecasts and how to look at it until you subscribe to us on YouTube, and make sure you definitely download our podcast wherever you get your podcast. Let's jump right into some of these guys that could be a possibility as an edge rusher. I think there's a couple of guys that are really, I would say intriguing. Let's talk about this. A guy like a Marcus Davenport, right? He's been injured a lot, but he's been an effective pass rusher when he has been healthy. It could be a gamble that we get a guy like him. Take a look at his pass rushing availability and take a look how strong he is in that retrospect. Since he entered the league in 2018, Jeff, Davenport's 17.8 pass rush win rate and 13.9 pressure rate are both top 20 marks among edge rushers. He's also earned a very respectable 82.1 run defense grade for his career, which ranks 16th over that span, right? But the thing with him is just the injuries, right? He's a guy that is a name that you should look out for. And then there's guys we haven't talked about as well. You can go on and you could look at a guy like in defensive line. You got a guy like Zach Allen. He's a guy that is under the mold of I think he's a tweener a little bit. I think he sat up underneath JJ Watt. He's another guy that I think can really get things going. He took a big league in 2022, earned his first run defense grade above 60, and his first pass rush grade over 70. This is according to Pro Football Focus, and with a career best 35 quarterback pressures and an 8.3 pressure rate. So that's a guy that we could look after to be something that we can talk about. And then there's a couple more guys. One more guy I want to mention in terms of edge rusher that we do have out here. You got some older guys like a Melvin Ingram who played for the Dolphins. He's a rotational player at this point in his career. He's not a starter, but he's a guy that can come give you some snaps. You got a guy like Justin Houston who seems to be old as dirt, but he just continues to play well. Even as a rotational pass rush specialist with just 400 snaps this season, Houston's 18.4 pass rush win rate and 14.6 pressure percentage are both top 25 amongst edge defenders. And last but not least, let's talk about Brandon Graham a little bit. Another guy, career guy that gets after the quarterback. Another Eagles guys. Could Jim Schwartz bring in a guy like that? Let us know in the chat what you think about that. Let us know in the comment section about Brandon Graham. 34 right now. Graham's 22.9 pass rush win rate, ranks 6th among edge defenders, and this is as a rotational player. Jeff, any of those names intrigue you, or any other names you want to discuss as potential edge rushers that the Browns should look at bringing in?
I am going to touch on a couple of the names you mentioned. First things first, we're looking for guys who are going to come in, second and long, third and long, obvious pass situations. Melvin Ingram, certainly one that fits that bill. Been all over the NFL, has a calling card for getting him in the backfield. This guy, look, you're not going to ask him to come in, take on pulling guards on 1st and 10 and run support. Never really been his bag. That's okay, because if you can get after the quarterback like a player like Melvin Ingram can, you can kind of dictate where you fit, what you think you can bring to the table. Another player kind of fits that mold as well from the Los Angeles Rams again, Ogbonnaya Okonkwo. Now, when I told you guys, you got to look sometimes at the outside linebacker spot, all right, in these things, when you look at specifically a spot rack to find some of these guys. Straight pass rushers, ability to get home, guys that will excel playing with a guy like Myles Garrett. Now, when you brought up Zach Allen, I like the tweener idea because these are guys that can maybe play as a bigger defensive end and can kick inside in your passing situations. I'm going to add 2 names to that list. DeMarcus Walker, I've said the name a couple of times now, was in Tennessee after a career in Denver. This year in Tennessee, finished the season with 8 sacks in a defense that was not necessarily led by Jim Schwartz, but obviously a heavy Jim Schwartz influence on that defense this year. Again, now, currently will be a free agent from the Denver Broncos. Where are my Buckeyes fans at? Dre'Mont Jones. Here's a guy we talked about. We talked about during his cycle. We thought he could have been a fit. But this guy with the size he brings, right now, prediction-wise, to maybe go for about 3.2, 3.5 million annually would be available. I'm sorry, not Dre'Mont. Dre'Mont's more about 7. DeMarcus Walker in that 3.5 range. But Dre'Mont Jones, these guys are guys that are bigger. They can play outside in 1st and 10 in obviously running situations. Then you can kick them in, start to go more of that look of that NASCAR package type of thing. Because this is one of the things, and again, we'll say it again, when you're going with this wide 9, and this is what's going to make it cool with Myles, is we know what Myles can do with just a short amount of space. Now imagine giving him a tad bit more space to just humiliate, dudes, the Jonah Williamses of the world, like he's been doing his entire career. So now even more eyes have to be put on Myles, which means you were telling these guys who are athletic, who've had a lot of success in the NFL getting after the passer, we're giving you one-on-ones. And, maybe, if there's a back in the backfield, who are you chipping? Are you chipping anybody other than Myles Garrett? Where's your attention? Anyone else than Myles Garrett? Probably not. So you're trying to find this perfect blend for Jim Schwartz of guys who can succeed as far as stopping the run so we can get to getting the better athletes on the field and making the quarterback stay. Go ahead, G.
You mentioned something with Dre'Mont Jones. I just wanted to throw this in, and I've been looking at specifically with this a lot. When you talk about the big guys, right? Since entering the league in 2019, Jones has 138 quarterback pressures, tied for 19th most among interior defenders. He also has a 14.5 pass rush win rate, which is 11th best over that span. So what you're telling me is since she's been here, since Dre'Mont Jones got into the league, what all he's done is just get after the quarterback. Just get after the quarterback. That's all Dre'Mont Jones have done. And you mentioned on the wide 9s, what you want to do, you want to give room for those dudes to boogie. They get ready to go.
It's what you're looking for. And look, you have to lengthen the teeth of this defensive line for the Browns. If you brought Jim Schwartz in here, and this obviously had to be a conversation that, before he finally agreed that this had to be key to it is we are going to make a huge, huge effort into building this defensive line. And we understand it is nowhere near where it needs to be, but we are going to allow you to have input on basically the groceries you are going to be cooking dinner with. And it's paramount. And that's what you get a guy like Jim Schwartz to commit to at his age with his resume. And doesn't really have to do this. He was totally fine down in Tennessee doing his consultant thing. But for him, it's one last chance at it, one more chance to reinvent himself. You heard today him talk about his appreciation for this franchise. Basically his first days there, secretary saying, "Oh, hey, nice to meet you. Go run and grab me a pack of Newports." Like, this is the dudes this guy's paid. He talked about helping Nick Saban move out of Cleveland after the 94 season. Nick used to have this book that he kept. It was all week long. It was Monday notes, Tuesday notes, Wednesday notes, Thursday, how everybody practiced. Then he would conclude it with notes on each and every game. He didn't take the binder with him. That binder now belongs to Jim Schwartz. This is a way Jim Schwartz said, you want to know what? If that's the detail it takes, I might as well have somebody who's already shown it to me and help me find my way. It's going to be a big, big difference. Jim Schwartz does believe in analytics, does believe in numbers, but Jim Schwartz is the perfect combination of kind of old school, new school. And I think his premise on how he wants to play defensive line for this Browns franchise is what you need. You have to look at specific situations. You want to know what? If I'm down 3 and there's 6 minutes to go in the game, I better be able to put out a defensive unit that is going to get me a 3 and out and get the ball back into my quarterback's hands. Or there are 3 minutes to go in a game. I'm up 7. I got to make damn sure this team does not go down the field and score on me. And we'll get to this in the coming days with his secondary. And, I know some people believe they know what his theory is on secondary play. His secondary play has always been dictated to what he had. So you want to say, oh, well, is he going to play man? If you got Denzel Ward, if you got Greg Newsome, if you got MJ Emerson, you'd be doing yourself the ultimate disservice if you were not playing man-to-man coverage. He is Garrett Bush, part of the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, 11 to 1, Monday through Friday on YouTube. Check it out. Guys, killing it. Obviously, you'll get all your Browns off-season stuff, the Cavs, before you know it, they'll be talking spring training, and the Guardians had Ted Ginn Sr. in today. And I got to be honest, man, that was a great, great conversation. If you haven't checked it out, go ahead and do so now. 92.3 The Fan, radio personality, Saturday mornings, other opportunities to catch G over there at The Fan. Barbershop on YouTube, check that out. Pre-game, post-game coverage for all your Cleveland sports. G Bush is on it at GBush91. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. The show at Locked On Browns. We appreciate every single one of you who make your Locked On Browns your first listen every single day, whether it's on your favorite podcast platform, of course, here on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed, got those notifications on, so when the show drops, you are there, you are ready for it. Throw some likes on the episodes, keep promoting them for your boys. We do appreciate that. If you got Roku, fire it up, search Locked On Cleveland Sports. You will find the Locked On Browns podcast, Cavaliers, Guardians, and of course, the amazing group over at the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. We've got to Jim Schwartz, what he's going to be looking to do with Andrew Berry as far as building a defensive line on the interior, on the exterior, guys who can do both prominently as well. So, again, he is here. It's real. New regime for the Cleveland Browns, defensive side of the ball. Just going to sit back, cover the daylights out of it like we always do. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.